Hi, welcome to Itsy Bitsy's live read of Blood, Book 1 by K.T. Rose. Chapter 1 Chad. Trish wasn't a student at Miller University. In fact, she went to Radcliffe before women were allowed to take Harvard classes. No, she was at Miller with a different purpose in mind, and it had nothing to do with studying. She was sitting in some frat boy's dorm room. Chad was his name, with her fangs deep in his wrist, sucking on his musky skin and careful to lick up the mess of blood that ran from the wound like water leaking from a faucet. She considered the meal subpar. It was a little too sweet for her taste. Chad had certainly eaten nothing but cookies and jello shots all day, skipping protein and salt. Luckily, human blood naturally had enough protein and salt in each sip. Chad would sustain her for a month. Lightheaded and intertwined in gluttonous bliss, her body swayed with delight as she took him in. Chad twisted at the shoulders as he lay on the extra long twin bed, his body limp and lacking the oxygen needed for consciousness, let alone enough to put up a fight. Trish figured that he had been about 21 years old. He was tall enough to play sports, and his build was fair with a little weight around his middle. His face was empty of wrinkles, young and new, and his smile pearly. Chad had taken the time to chat her up before they headed to his room. He said something about playing an instrument and liking computers. He certainly told the truth about that, judging by the black tombstone case leaning against a desk with the biggest monitor she had ever seen sitting on top of it. The room's small size, slightly larger than a walk-in closet, made the computer look enormous. She was surprised the tiny room possessed a closet. To keep the conversation going, she pretended to be intrigued as she shared some lies about herself. She couldn't remember if she was Julie from the accounting firm or Tiffany from the dealership. It didn't matter. Her meals' backstories seemed to run together anyways, making it hard for her to put hobbies, jobs, and names with the faces of the corpse in her wake. As she and Chad stood toe to toe at the party downstairs, the only thing she thought of was his sweaty pores. The chemical scent of alcohol still wafted from him as he lay on his bed dying. Trish hated the smell, but it signified easy prey. Like most college boys, truckers, or in desperate times, a person down on their luck left to dig through pub and restaurant dumpsters. They were all so easy to trap and drain. Trish caressed the edges of the lacerations on Chad's arm with her tongue, pushing his blood to flow into her mouth as the party raged on beneath her feet. The attendees roared and chatted, yelled for more beer, and demanded someone to take their shirt off. Their voices were familiar sounds of the naive, too drunk and high on acid or pot to notice there was a monster upstairs. Sometimes Trish wondered if college students' parents bothered to teach them the basics, namely, not to bring strange women into their rooms. But no matter how thin and pale she looked in that dark dress, men always fell for her. Her lean figure and plump lips were effective bait, irresistibly mysterious, she was told. Still, when the police found their bodies, there was always mourning and a sense of loss for someone so young and talented, someone that human society classified as potentially important. Chad believed that hype, having told her that he was working on a chemical engineering degree and minoring in music. He was so close to graduating and living that life. As he spoke, Trish pictured him getting married to some nurse, buying a house, and having kids, because that's what humans did. But what Chad didn't know, a tidbit that she decided to keep to herself, was that he was doomed to become an unhappy, overworked, middle manager who flirted with the idea of sticking a barrel in his mouth. She'd seen many people like him over the last 137 years. Chad was a cliche. There was nothing special about his dreams because he wouldn't live long enough to loathe them. In fact, Chad had done Trish a favor by cursing her cramps and insufferable hunger pains, and for that she was grateful. Chet stopped jerking and her belly was full. She slowly withdrew her fangs, allowing blood to drip onto her lap. She used one hand to get a tight grip on his arm, forming a tourniquet. There was no pulse, just as she expected. With her free hand, she pulled the pocket knife from her leather tote, which lay against her thigh. Trish learned a long time ago that a murder could be hidden in plain sight. By the time prey was found, their bodies would bleed out from the wrist or the neck. It could be suicide. It could be murder. The police never really knew. Even though she had to leave Chad in his bed for everyone to find, she preferred getting rid of the corpse by burying it somewhere massive like the ocean, the lake, or a construction site, a dump. She'd make the authorities look for months, years, decades, and then wash her hands of the situation. Because if they did find the body, there was no DNA. The biological code they used to match a crime with a killer. She pulled the blade up Chad's wrist, along her fang marks. The knife tore his skin in half and flooded the wound with its leftover liquids. His blood had gone syrupy and thick, tempting her to lick it dry. But it was so close to clotting it would taste bitter and have all the consistency of old clumpy cottage cheese. Trish laid Chad's arm on the bed and considered his pale face. He was a different person from the man she made out with and strangled before she went in for the kill. His eyelids were at half mast and he seemed peaceful. She unclenched his fingers and dipped them into the new gash. Then she slid the knife into his palm, staging his body. Then she listened. She listened hard and kicked herself for not doing so sooner. She didn't think straight or at all when she was hungry, and Chad seemed reserved. She was sure that his room was empty and that no one knew about the woman that he allowed upstairs. He'd even locked the door behind them. During her quick survey upon entry, she didn't see anything. As they huffed and made out, swapped tongues and giggled, she didn't hear anything alarming. And as she subdued him and slurped his blood, she didn't smell anyone. But right then was the crucial time to listen and engross herself in the environment because she was done eating. It was time to leave unnoticed because anything could happen around them. Them meaning humans. Them meaning blood bags. Them meaning food. Trish heard a young girl vomiting outside, just below the window. She imagined it smelled like cheap vodka and tapias. The boys just blew her feet. The boys just beneath her feet slammed shots of what smelled like pure ethanol. A girl bawled her eyes out just next door as she yelled about how someone was a horrible boyfriend. And then Trish heard heavy breathing in the closet. The hairs on her neck rose. Chapter 2, Prying Eyes. Trish stood, eyes trained on the closet door. It was light brown with a golden knob, and someone was hiding behind it. For a second, she wondered if her own senses were going with age. How had she not noticed before? She knew about all the noises and smells, and it could be hard to isolate a sound or a scent, but it hadn't always been that hard. Humans smelled like iron and body odor, and she was surrounded by them. But she missed the one that was right under her nose. Not the one who lay dead on his bed, but the one that was hiding in his closet. Whoever was on the other side had been quiet for a long time as they watched the monster work. She narrowed her eyes and approached so slowly. Her mellow legs threatened to sit her back down as her full belly pleaded for time to digest. Her claws extended, scraping the nail beds of her fingers as they grew out to the full length of full size steak knives. Her fingers bled as her body went on the defense. The breath on the other side of the door quickened, and with a drunken, hurried, hurried stride, Trish grabbed the doorknob and snatched the door open. Someone, a young woman, rushed Trish, shoving her in the gut with her shoulders. Trish fell back onto the bed and onto Chad. She felt light on her feet and in her head, tottering in awe. The short, skinny girl overpowered her, but only for a second. The girl sprang for the door, shouting, "Help!" Her deep brown skin was even and soft, young and beautiful, but her hazen eyes were full of alarm and terror, and when she darted past, a whiff of sweet wine. Tropical? Fruit punch? Trish hit it hit Trish in the face. That was it. That's how Trish missed her. The girl's scent blended with everyone else's, including the very dead, once very drunk Chad. But full or not, high off blood or not, Trish couldn't let her get away. Springing for her and nearly collapsing under her own clumsy weight, Trish snatched the girl by her long, thick, crinkly hair. She yanked, pulling the girl back and bringing her ear to Trish's mouth. There was no time to find a place to make her disappear. Trish had to drain her right then and there. Already bloated, blurry eyed, and lethargic, she barely had room for dessert, but she was going to make room. She planted her free hand on the girl's mouth and embedded her claws on into her cheeks, careful not to draw blood. Like to sneak around? Trish asked softly. The girl tried to scream underneath Trish's hand. Shut up and listen, Trish quipped through her bared teeth. The girl's heart slammed hard in her chest. Her blood pressure was out of whack. A high blood pressure meant big red messes that screamed murder. No real investigation required. There wasn't enough time to clean or subdue the girl because of her clear outburst, a desperate call for help. Someone had to have heard it. The girl tried shouting again, and Trish considered crushing her face with her tightening grip. Nah, that will leave an even bigger mess, she thought. Instead, said, "Look, I don't know why you were in that closet, what you just saw the but you just saw the last thing you'll ever see." The girl jerked and wiggled, fighting hard to break free. But Trish was stronger. Trish was always stronger, full or not. She stuck her fangs into the girl's neck, forcing her to squirm. Trish closed her eyes, enjoying the taste. The blood was better than the dead boys on the bed. The girl had drunk some alcohol, but not as much as Chad had. Yeah, she smoked some weed. The slight earthy tinge of THC lingered within her life. Liquid said as much. But she ate sweeteners, not candy and ice cream, but fruits and vegetables, tea and honey. She was healthy, a perfect dessert. The girl's blood cascaded down Trish's throat, elevating her mind and body to a cerebral high. She gorged on sweet nectar, seeing double as she opened her eyes and watched the door split and collide, playing tricks with her vision. The girl twisted and turned, weakened against Trish's grip until she went limp. Trish hummed, pleased. Another win, another meal, another. Thank you for listening.